Hello. Hello, and good afternoon. Bonjour, et je vous souhaite bienvenue à l'église Cedar Park. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Cedar Park United Church for another afternoon concert and tea, and it's so good to have you all here on another fabulous day of fall with bright sunshine coming through. It's wonderful. Enjoy everything that you have. If you wish to take anything home with you, you'll find that there are some plastic bags on the table, and you're welcome to, if you decide not to finish your plate, to take things home with you. A reminder that there are washrooms at the back of the church in that corner over there if you need them. Otherwise, I think many of you have been here before. And so it's my pleasure to welcome on your behalf Ludwig Sémerjian, who was with us a year ago and is back with us. And we're so looking forward to hear you again. And Ludwig will be presenting a program all about Schubert today. All Schubert. Schubert all afternoon. Wonderful. So please give him a warm welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be back here at Cedar Park after a year. It seems just like yesterday I was here. So today, when Elizabeth invited me to do another concert here, I thought, why not do something different and something special? And I think because it's going to be so special today, it merits a little bit of explanation, sort of a little pre-concert tour of what we're going to be hearing. And you'll see that on the program, it's called the Schubertiade. And I guess you could ask yourself, what is a Schubertiade? Schubertiade is actually a term that was coined back in Schubert's day, in the early part of the 19th century, where, you see, Schubert was different than most performers. He was very retiring and shy. He almost never left his little circle of friends that he had. He never gave public concerts. He just basically churned out music day and night as if it was coming from some kind of a fountain inside him and coming out like a clear mountain spring, just oozing out beautiful music. And yet, he didn't hear most of the pieces that he ever wrote because he did not like giving concerts. And so his friends would always get together at his home or wherever he was staying and hear the latest creations from Schubert. And these became called Schubertiades. And every couple of weeks or couple of months, when Schubert would have a new piece to show, his friends would get together and he would play them on the piano, or if other instruments were needed, he would bring them in, and his friends. And so it became something of a thing, even after Schubert's death, to perform Schubertiades in his honor. And that's what we're going to do here tonight, this afternoon. Schubert is known for some specific things. First thing is kind of a sad thing. He's basically known to be of all the great composers, of having the shortest lifespan. He lived only 31 years, which is quite astonishing, considering the amount of music that he was able to produce in those years. And a lot of the music, like I said, he didn't hear himself. They were mostly published years and years after his death. So a lot of his music was actually quite unknown until the late 19th century and early part of the 20th century. The other thing that Schubert is known for was as a songwriter. He wrote hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs, little songs. And what's so special about Schubert's songs is that they weren't occasional pieces. Other composers before Schubert, like Mozart and Haydn and Beethoven, also wrote songs, but they were secondary to their work. Whereas Schubert made songwriting the center of his compositional output. And what he did was he elevated the song from just the simple melodies that were used before him into really deep and profound tone poems, basically. And he did that by not only by having a sensitivity to create images with music, but also by choosing very, very good texts from poets and romantic poets that lived at his time. Really, the greatest he would choose. And he was able to match the words with the music in a way that nobody else did before, and turned the art song into basically a new form of classical music, which before was basically just street songs or little things like Baba Black Sheep or something like that. But he turned the song into as important work as a symphony or a string quartet or any kind of important chamber music. The other thing he was known for was something called heavenly length. This is a term that was coined in the 19th century because Schubert's music was notorious for being long. His music is very, very long. Probably because he was mostly coming from a vocal way of seeing things. That means that his melodies are long-winded. They're meant to be sung. No matter what instrument is playing, you could always see that this is coming from the human voice more than the instruments. So this, because when he's writing for a song, then he has the constraints of the human voice that can only sing for a short period of time before becoming tired. But when he's writing for an instrument, he doesn't have that constraint. Therefore, he just lets it loose and just goes on and on and on. And the people who decided to call his music heavenly length. And it makes sense, because when you think about it, have somebody answer the phone, and when you think about it, heavenly length, what does that mean? It means that when we all get to heaven, hopefully, we're there for a very, very long time. But it's so beautiful that we're not bored. So that's the heavenly length that we see with Schubert's music. It's so lovely that we don't mind being there forever. The next thing he's known for, and this is probably the most interesting, he's known for not finishing his greatest works. Schubert has more unfinished masterpieces than probably any other composer that ever existed. I mean, there are other important unfinished works, like, for instance, Bruckner's Ninth Symphony was never finished. Bach never finished his Art of the Fugue. And the most famous of all is Mozart's Requiem, of course. We all know the story where Mozart was supposedly dictating the Requiem from his deathbed and wasn't able to finish. We saw that in the movie. Schubert is a different case in respect to his unfinished works. The other composers that I mentioned, Mozart, Bruckner, Bach, they died before they were able to finish these final works of theirs. Whereas Schubert's unfinished works are all written years before his death. So it's a bit of a mystery why he never finished these great works, because they're not works that are occasional works or even secondary works or works that are less of quality than the works that he finished. There are, in fact, 3 of his greatest masterpieces in 3 different genres. One is a string quartet, which he only finished 1 movement. The second is the most famous of all, his unfinished symphony, which is played very often, has become part of the staple of the symphonic repertoire, even though he only finished 2 out of the 4 movements. And this sonata that we're going to hear, which also he only finished 2 of the projected 4 movements. And of course, this brings up a couple of questions, interesting questions. Why did Schubert leave these wonderful masterpieces unfinished? Now, there's no real consensus of why Schubert would have stopped writing these works. But my theory is that Schubert was a transitional composer. That means he lived in a time that was in between 2 major styles. He started out in the classical style, mostly emulating the works of Mozart and Haydn, very much writing in the 18th century classical style. But as he got a little older, the style shifted away from classicism to the new romantic way of writing things. And the romantics, at least the ones that came after Schubert, once the movement was really established, were less inclined to write typical 18th century classical forms, as in symphonies and sonatas and string quartets, which had multiple movements. They preferred either one short, maybe 10, 12-minute work that summed up everything they had to say, or they preferred collections of little pieces, like character pieces with titles that they brought together. Schubert, however, had, at least at the end of his life, he didn't have the chance to really transition into this type of romantic writing where the sonata was put aside. So he was still trying to fit the romantic way of writing into classical forms. And this caused problems. In classical forms, the first two movements of a symphony or a sonata or a string quartet are always the most serious. The third and fourth movements, the third is often a dance movement, like a minuet, and the finale is basically a happy ending for everybody to go home happy words. But because the Romantics, not that they didn't want to be happy, but they sort of resisted against happiness. They preferred staying intense the whole time and maybe even having a sad ending for a change, you know? It was not something the 18th century people liked at all. They demanded happy endings, but the Romantics didn't. So what happens is when Schubert writes, and these three works of his come from his middle period, where he really went full-on romantic and hadn't really developed the style that he would be able to continue this romantic tradition into all four movements. So when he finishes, let's say, the first or maybe the second movement, it's like that's all he had to say. He didn't need a happy ending. He didn't need a dance movement for people to relax. He thought, in a romantic way, that this is all there is. And so these three works were left unfinished because I think Schubert basically said everything that he had to say, and he didn't need the other two movements. Now, in the last year of his life, he did start developing a style where he was able to bring the seriousness and the romance of the earlier movements into the last movements. But that only happened in the very last year of his life, and then he was able to finish his great works. But at this point still, he hasn't reached that level where he's able to continue the romantic spirit right through till the end of the work. So that's why we have these famous unfinished works of his. Now that brings up a problem for us performers. How do you present a fragment of a work to an audience? What do you do? Now there's many things you could do. Some people have tried to finish these works because there are sketches. Schubert intended to finish them. He just didn't get around to it or lost interest or thought that it wasn't necessary. So people have taken these little fragments that he wrote for the other movements and tried to finish them. But that's, for me, a fool's errand in a way, because it's not going to be Schubert. And Schubert is known especially for doing extremely, extremely unpredictable and even radical harmonic twists to his compositions. And nobody can match that except Schubert himself. And so the ones who have tried to finish the works, they haven't really caught on. Now the symphony is the exception where it has caught on in its unfinished form. And it's called the Unfinished Symphony. It's very famous. You can hear it all the time in concert halls and symphonies. But in that case, it's easier because it's a symphony and it has a whole orchestra behind it. You get the interest of the color and the dynamics and the different instruments that bring interest to the work and that give the second movement a certain finality that is satisfying. Whereas in the sonata, it's not so much the case. And also because pianists, I think, don't like quiet endings. They want to end with a bang, right? They want the applause. So this sonata is unjustly, in my opinion, neglected because of it. So it's wonderful that I'm able to present it here. It's a piece I like very much. So I thought how to end the piece, how to end this section. So after a lot of thought, I wasn't even sure what I was going to do until I'm just about here now. I thought I would take two other works by Schubert, shorter works called impromptus, which are meant to be improvisés, like improvised. Just they're very light, they're very melodic, but they're still very long, and add them as a third and fourth movement to the sonata itself. Now Schubert wrote two sets of impromptus, which are very famous, but those two sets are more of a collection of works that don't have much to do with each other in the group. They're four each. But he did write another set of impromptus at the very end of his life, which are a set of three. And these are written more in a way that they have some kind of relationship with each other, almost like a sonata, slow, fast, and slow. And the second of these is a dance movement. It's more of almost like a waltz in a way, but a slow waltz. And so this sort of ties into the third movement of a sonata being a dance form or of a minuet. And the last of these sonatas, happily for us, or for me, is in the same key as the sonata. So it gives a satisfying ending in the same tonality as we began. And it was meant to be the final of the 3 impromptus, so it makes a good final movement for the sonata. Why not, right? So what we have here now is sort of a reconstructed sonata by Schubert. But at least everything you're going to hear is Schubert. It's all authentic. No fillers, nothing at all. It's all Schubert. So we're going to put this together, and I'm going to try to play it as if it's one piece, like from beginning to end, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you. Oh, it's quite the voyage, so sit back, relax, have your tea. It'll be a long trip. Heavenly length.
De la part de tout le monde ici, je veux vous remercier vraiment extraordinaire. Really a wonderful afternoon of music, and thank you so much for taking us into Schubert, into a deep dive. And I don't know if he would have been happy with how you ended his unfinished symphony, but we certainly were, and especially for a happy ending. Thank you again. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you again so much. I also want to extend a thank you to all the volunteers who helped set up these afternoon concerts. And make them such an enjoyable part of our life. A reminder that the next concert will be a month from now on November 26th. And Wayne Johnson will be back. Another great pianist of a very different style, but so enjoyable as well. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you all for coming.